Recruiting is critical in Dynasty mode, and at the heart of recruiting is the scholarship offer. But when is the right time for you to actually send that offer to a player? I've spent the last week running an experiment to find the optimal time for you to send a scholarship offer to a recruit. And by the end of this video, not only will you know the answer, but I'll also make sure to include how to use this knowledge to land an army of 3-star recruits at the end of the year. Now, right now, if you were to look online, there's really two main schools of thought as far as when you should send that scholarship offer. We'll call these two camps the believers of the upfront offer and the delayed offer. Now, supporters of the delayed offer believe it's worth waiting until you're first on that recruit's board to send a scholarship because there's a chance of getting an insta commit, where that recruit doesn't even have a battle, they just commit to your school. On the other hand, the upfront offer believers think that you should send that scholarship as soon as possible because in the preseason, all you could do is send offers or scout, and you get a little bit of influence every single week when you have a scholarship offer pending. But to figure out the superior strategy between the two, I designed a quick experiment. In order to find out, I need to control 2 schools in the exact same season, so that way I could send the exact same amount of hours to every single prospect. And to make the schools as similar as possible to try and reduce other effects, I went with Arizona and Arizona State. On top of that, I made sure that both schools started with a brand new level 1 head coach, which as you'll see later in the video might have actually been a mistake. But now that we have our team set up, we can get our recruits. Both teams added the exact same 35 players, and half of them came from University of Arizona's recommended board, and the other half came from ASU's recommended board. At this point, each of the 35 recruits were going to have a randomly assigned upfront offer school, and the other school was going to do the delayed offer, which means they're only going to be allowed to offer a scholarship if they come into first place. Now, to keep things simple, we could actually throw the schools out the window at this point. So instead of U of A and ASU, instead we'll be talking about the upfront offer school and the delayed offer school, because again, the upfront offer school was U of A for half of them, and for the other half of the recruits, it was ASU. So now that each of the prospects had an upfront offer school and a delayed offer school, who did they choose? Well, of the 35 recruits, by the end of the season, the upfront offer school outperformed the delayed offer school in 29 out of the 35 cases. That means the upfront offer school won that battle over 80% of the time. But those 6 recruits that actually preferred the delayed offer school aren't just outliers. They actually perfectly explain the power of the early scholarship offer. And to see that, all you need is this graph right here. So what you're seeing right now is 35 points representing the 35 different recruits, all colored by whether or not the upfront offer school won that battle. So from left to right is the interest rank at the start of the year for that upfront school for each recruit. So that means guys over here on the left started off with the upfront school in their top 2 or 3, while guys all the way over here on the right either barely had them in their top 10 or honestly didn't even have them in their top 10 at all. And the vertical axis represents how much of an advantage the upfront school had over the delayed school. So for all the players above that black line, that means that they started off being bigger fans of the upfront offer school than the delayed offer school, which means anybody below that black line went the other way around. So if you look at the 13 recruits above that black line, you can see pretty clearly that the upfront school did win the battles, and it makes sense because they started off with a small advantage or a big advantage for all of those people. Now, what is surprising are the players below the line. For the 3 recruits where there was no advantage, since neither Arizona school was in the top 10, and for the 19 where the upfront school had a disadvantage, the upfront offer team still won that battle 73% of the time. And now the answer is clear for why the upfront school didn't win those 6 other recruiting battles. If you look, all 6 of those recruits were in the exact same position. The upfront offer team wasn't even in the top 10, and the delayed offer team had such a big advantage over it that they really just couldn't catch up. And honestly, I think that might strengthen the case for the early offer even more, because it's not like the early offer school lost those 6 recruits because of some hidden bug or feature that we don't know about. It's pretty clear that they lost them just because they started off at such a disadvantage that they couldn't really catch up. But if Usain Bolt were to win every race he's in except for the 6 where he starts lying on his back, those races don't make him slower, it just means he probably shouldn't race when he has to start lying on his back. So right now I can say for sure that the benefit of the early offer is super clear. If you're recruiting against a similar school with a similar head coach throwing similar hours at the player, you're probably going to win that battle if you throw that scholarship, and they don't, because that small weekly influence that you get that they're not going to have access to. Now, despite this overwhelming evidence for the early scholarship offer, I do have to admit there's one situation where I may be totally wrong here. And that's going to go back to what I talked about earlier, how both of these schools had level 1 coaches. Because yes, we were able to figure out that sending a scholarship offer early definitely does help you in recruiting battles, but what we didn't find out was, are you going to be missing out on a lot of insta commits by doing that? Like if you were to send 10 offers out to players where you're not number 1 in, would you have gotten 2 or 3 insta commits if you waited until you were the top school for all those 10 guys? And technically, we didn't really get to see the full potential of that during this experiment, because for almost every recruit, whatever Arizona school offered the scholarship first ended up just running away with it compared to the other. But I will say, of the close to 40 scholarships that were offered in this, most of them were from the school that's number 1 on the rankings, and there were 0 insta commits. With how strong the evidence evidence is for sending an offer early, what we really need to see in order to disprove this is somebody at Arizona or Arizona State getting 7, 8, or 9 insta commits with 4 or 5-star level talent. I mean, if you're able to pull that off, I could totally understand the reason why you might want to wait a couple extra weeks on that offer. What isn't going to do the job for me though is if somebody shows me like 10 different insta commits and they're all 3-stars. Because as I'm about to show you, using an early scholarship will let you land an army of 3-stars, and you don't have to sit there and worry about fighting for insta commits in week 4 for some random 3-star player. And in order to do this, we're going to do a strategy that I like to call marinating. Yes, marinating like in cooking, because a scholarship offer is the only action that you could take for any prospect that is a one-time payment but will always have influence as long as it's there. If you were to get this little chunk of influence every single week from actually sending hours at somebody, you might spend like over 100 hours to get this same result. Or you could send them a scholarship offer in the preseason for 5 hours and then just wait. And all of a sudden, you'll slowly gain an influence over time, and you'll slowly work your way from out of the race to first. So this is what the overall strategy looks like. You offer your scholarships to everyone in the preseason when you have the extra hour. Then you use the rest for scouting, whatever you want to do. During the first half of the year, as I'm sure you probably already do, you go after your big fish. Now, while you're going after your big fish, there's probably only like 6 to 12, 6 to 15 guys that you're really trying to get. For the other 20 plus spots on your board, this is where you could start marinating. All those 20 plus other slots could be 3-star prospects where you're the only school with a scholarship offer. As long as that's the case, you'll gain a small amount of influence every single week, and even if you started off with 3-stars that did not like you at all, you'll eventually take over as the leader by the end of the regular season, assuming that nobody else jumps in. And if another school does jump in the battle for that 3-star during the year, you could just replace them. Because no matter where you're at in the regular season, there is a sea of 3-stars with 0 scholarship offers. So all you gotta do is find a new one, give them an offer for those 5 hours, and then sit there and wait for the rest of the regular season as you slowly become the leader in that battle. By the time you get towards the end of the regular season and you're done with all the big battles for those big 4 and 5-star players and you have some extra hours, now all of a sudden you have 20 plus 3-stars on your board. And all of them have a scholarship offer, and you're probably in first for all of them. And it's all because you sent those offers as early as possible. So that's where I stand as far as when you should offer a player a scholarship. I do think this experiment really solidified my belief in that, but again, there's a slight chance we may be wrong here. And if we are, it's because somebody out there has 5 or 10 insta commits of elite players at a small school. So if that's you, or if you know of these situations, please leave them in the comment section so we can try and learn from this.